The Wellness Show, Episode 9.
Welcome to The Wellness Show, a podcast on health and wealth. I'm your host, Tyson Bannigan, the founder of the Extraordinary-Healing-Arts.academy. Join me as we get the latest insight, tips, and strategies from wellness providers, coaches, and successful, heart-centered entrepreneurs, and much, much more. So welcome to The Wellness Show. I'm excited to have on the call today Joshua Shapiro and the crystal skull phenomena. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Tyson. Honor and privilege to be here.
Yes, so tell me, what is this crystal skull phenomena all about?
Well, back in the late 1800s, there were people who were finding, especially in Mexico, by ancient ruins, these skull-shaped objects. I guess they were made primarily of quartz crystal. And it was kind of a mystery because some of them were fashioned from their form very well. But of course, today, there are many carvers now who are making crystal skulls all over the world, especially in China and Brazil. And there's a lot more crystal skulls that are being found coming out of the ground, either connected to ancient ruins. But the key with the crystal skulls is that they have a special energy which is changing the lives of people. And it's a healing energy and also an energy that brings out a person's gifts. And there has been so-called prophecies told by different indigenous people that these crystal skulls would be coming out and they would be a key tool to help humanity create peace in the future. And it's because of that, that's why I've dedicated over 30 years of my life to teach people, allow people to have an experience with them, and to help many people also get their own crystal skulls.
Yeah, you broke up there a bit, so you're helping people, teach people about crystal skulls. That's what you said, I think. So tell me about...
And also how to get their own crystal skull too.
And why would anybody want a crystal skull?
Well, the key reason that I think the crystal skulls are important, after seeing thousands of them literally in this 30-year period of time, is that I believe they are a door or a portal for other living consciousness from other dimensions to come through and interact with us. It's almost like the crystal skulls are a dimensional door. And one of the experiences that many people have is the skulls, their personal skulls, are talking with them and giving them advice. And for people who are not involved, I would say, in spiritual studies, this sounds like utter fantasy and madness. But we hear from people all the time about the communication that they're having with their skulls. So I believe it's a way for our spiritual family and the other dimensions to come in and help us more directly through a physical object that we see and we can touch.
Well, that sounds fascinating. And of course, I agree with you totally, because I'm a crystal skull carrier or taker, or one who takes care of crystal skulls. I understand that one doesn't necessarily go looking for a crystal skull. One actually waits for a crystal skull to come. What's your feeling around all that?
Well, I believe we have, Katrina and I, that's my life partner, my spiritual divine life partner. We have over 20 skulls, and almost all of them were gifts or skulls that we found that were given to us. So I think the crystal skulls pick us, we don't pick them. And somehow it's related energetically, that the skull feels a connection with us, and that as their guardian, that we can work with them to allow the frequencies of energies that they generate to be used in the proper way. So I definitely agree with you that they're picking us.
Some people have been concerned about crystal skulls and the amount of energy they carry, particularly the big ones. I understand that really there's really no problem when being with a crystal skull or having an audience with one. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is they actually open up or to the ability of a person to receive. So one can't be overloaded with a download of information. Is that your understanding, Joshua?
Well, I believe that on some level, every person, no matter what experience they have, that they have drawn that experience into their life. And we have seen certain people who have been overwhelmed by some of the crystal skulls that are known. But what happens is it's a catalyst for taking them through a change. It releases, let's say, energies that no longer work for them, emotions they've held on to, and then all of a sudden there's more of their higher self that's able to manifest through them in a physical way. So I always think the crystal skulls are a tool for initiating these positive changes, which I've had this happen myself too. Certain skulls where I had, I was ill, even with the Mitchell Hedges skull, which is the most famous skull. I remember when I went to Italy and they showed it to the people who were hosting us, I got a fever within a day or two after that. But then as a result of that fever, the whole idea for the Crystal Skull World Peace Meditations that we do now on the 13th of every month, that's where the idea came to me. So it's kind of like it was helping me to release old energies and to become more open to universal energies. So I always see the crystal skulls as a catalyst for changes in a person's life, and they're going to come into a person's life in the right moment when they're ready for those changes to happen.
And also you talk very much, and so do others, around the fact that the gathering of crystal skulls, that has to do with opening up our consciousness more on a planetary level. And I know you're involved with it that way as well. So could you say a bit about that?
Yes, I believe that ultimately the real purpose about the crystal skulls is that as the crystal skull guardians, regardless whether their skull is a very old one or a very new one, as we start bringing them together and working with them together, they collectively have an energy which I think is very beneficial, not only for the people that are in the presence, but for the planet itself. So based on that feeling, Katrina and I have been doing these world peace meditations, as I mentioned, on the 13th of every month. We just call it a Crystal Skull World Peace Meditation. But then also a bunch of Crystal Skull Guardians came together and they created in 2014 what's called Crystal Skull World Day, to have one day where we could all come together and celebrate doing some form of meditation for peace and healing the world. And then, of course, that continued on in the current year of 2015 when we're doing this interview. And I believe it will continue into 2016. So I believe that one of the purposes of the crystal skulls is it's almost like an excuse to bring people together, to work together, sharing their talents and skills, to co-create something greater than we could create alone by ourselves. And there have been several, conferences and meetings of this, but there's still a lot more work to be done. Human beings are still involved, and it's still going to take us a long while before everyone is going to be so happy to embrace the idea of cooperation and working together. But each time that we do the Crystal Skull World Peace Meditations, or we have Crystal Skull World Day, I think it helps to uplift the energy of the planet, and more people are coming together through that. So this is why I feel these types of activities, bringing together people from all over the planet with their crystal skulls, is very important and is an example about what the future holds. Because I've had visions about where we're headed. A part of my soul, let's say, who's from my future in this lifetime, has been communicating with me and kind of giving me visions about what life will be like maybe 30, 40, 50 years in the future. So I just know the crystal skulls are a catalyst for helping to bring humanity together. So this is why Katrina and I are very supportive of the crystal skulls and what they represent.
Well, continuing on in that vein, of course, there is the legend of the 12 crystal skulls coming together, which will be indicative of planetary transformation or change. So would you like to mention something about that from your experience? I know there's many different Indigenous legends about that.
Okay, well, first of all, I just want to show people one of the crystal skulls that we have. This one is called Portal de Luz, Portal of Light. He's 10 pounds. He was made by a Brazilian carver named Leandro, who's quite famous. Has probably made thousands of crystal skulls. So, but it really takes somebody with a gift to be able to do this. I have no clue how I could ever carve a skull like that. But anyway, getting back to your question about the, actually it's 13 crystal skulls coming together, is supposedly there was a indigenous legend which could be linked to very ancient civilizations, you know, that they've kept the legends from that could be thousands of years old. I personally believe that in Lemuria and in Atlantis, if there wasn't at least one set of major crystal skulls, there might have been multiple sets of crystal skulls, 13 crystal skulls that work together. The 1 plus 12 shows up all throughout many histories and religions. Like in Judaism, which I was brought up, you have the priest with the 12 tribes of Israel. In Christianity, you have the Christ and the 12 apostles. In our solar system, it is believed that there are actually 12 planets here, one beyond Pluto and 2 in front of Mercury, which we can't see because of the light of the sun. That's according to George Hunt Williamson, who was an early UFO contactee in the 1950s. So this concept of a master skull with 12 skulls surrounding it has come up through indigenous cultures, and I think it's a reflection of this number of 1 and 12, which has to do with the evolution of humanity and this planet. Now, whether this is true or not, or whether if any of these so-called 13 original skulls are out or not, this is all conjecture. I personally feel that humanity is not yet ready for these higher level of skulls, and there may be one that has been in communication with me, which I wrote about in my last book, which I call The Blue Skull, that I've only seen through my inner vision, and it feels like it's in the etheric energy level. It's not a skull that I've actually touched. So it's possible that there could be more higher vibrating skulls that are in another dimension that are waiting until humanity's ready. So we have all these other skulls that have come out, which is giving people experiences and opportunity to feel the energy, to decide if they want to be a guardian and so on. So, my soul tells me there is a basis of truth to this idea that there is 1 or more sets of 13 skulls that work together. So, but I don't think that we've seen any from this set yet. I think we're not ready yet.
Yeah, I am inclined to agree with you. I also have the intuition that with every civilization that's gone through an ascension on this planet, and according to some books around us, there's been more than one. In fact, there's been many. That there's a set of at least 12 crystal skulls for every ascension that's occurred on this planet. But that's just my intuitive sense. But moving on, you were on a search for that crystal skull that you were just talking about that you feel is in the other dimension. So have you given up the search on the physical plane for that? Are you waiting for it to tell you when it manifests, or where are you with that? Because that's a very interesting story that you've been involved in for a good part of your life now.
Yes. Well, you have to understand, for me, I'm in touch with that skull all the time. When I think about it, I feel it around me. I've actually had it come onto my right hand. I felt like a weight. And I said, okay, if you want to experience this skull, put your hand over mine, and people have felt a tremendous energy. So it could be, in a sense, even though it's not here in the physical, I still have this connection with it, and to some degree, when I talk about it, part of its energy can be experienced by people. So I haven't felt the calling to go back to Peru. I turned 60 this year, and it's getting harder for me as I'm getting older for my physical endurance. I don't know if I would be able to survive 2 weeks in Peru at high elevation you have to go to. So I'm not exactly sure what happens. I mean, this skull told me that no human being is going to find it. It's going to show up when it decides it's the right time. So all I can think is that perhaps I was inspired, to put our book out, where I had my travel logs from going to Peru 3 times looking for it, is just to introduce to people, that there is this possibility that there are these other skulls in the other dimensions, which are, because I've talked with other people who have told me that they've also had visions of skulls that they've not physically seen yet. So I just think that the crystal skulls is not just physical. There are counterpart skulls that exist on other dimensions, and they're communicating with the physical skulls here. It's kind of like the internet, all these different levels of communication. So, but I do believe, I did get the sensing that this skull was physical at one time in the past, and that for whatever reason, its energy is just too much right now. I mean, I think that there are skulls that have existed in the past. If a person was in its presence, they would disintegrate. Its energy is too high. So everything has to happen in its proper time. And we have enough crystal skulls that are out now of all different levels of frequency and energy and healing energy and expansion. That's enough to keep us busy, and enough to make it into a great mystery of still trying to understand, what exactly is involved with the crystal skulls. Because I don't know if there's really any person that has all the answers. I mean, it's like we each have different theories and ideas, and no one theory or idea is better or worse than any other.
Yeah, I certainly understand that the crystal skulls can have incredible powers, and being around them, I know when I was in Sedona at the Crystal Skull Gathering, that there were private audiences that people could have, and it was one of the audiences was Max. And what happened was that the crystal bowl in the same room just shattered, spontaneously shattered. So we did a little burial ceremony. So they do carry energy, and sometimes very intense energy, and that's something we need to reckon with. So I agree with you that it may not be the right time and the place for these high energy crystal skulls to be actually on the physical dimension, the third plane at this time. Really exciting. So what was your first experience with a crystal skull? Could you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. The first time that I personally met a crystal skull was in 1983. So that's like 32 years ago. I was in California. I was kind of traveling on faith, and there was a store in San Jose, California, which had carried my first book, Journeys of an Aquarian Age Networker. This was a book I self-published. And so I was just going to visit my friend who owned the store and see if she needed more books. And she pulled out these pictures of this amethyst crystal skull, which today people know by the name of Ami. And it was like I just had a tremendous response just to the picture. I felt like a strong inner earthquake vibration inside of me. Then there was a real earthquake that happened about a half an hour later in California. The picture was vibrating on the table. So this was like a very powerful experience. And then it was like after all of that, I just had a sensing that the crystal skulls were vital for the future of humanity. So it was almost like the picture of me was saying, now that you know or you remember from soul memories of working with us before, what are you going to do about this? And so, of course, I wanted to see the skull, and I was able to see it for, I don't know, maybe about a half an hour or 40 minutes. I got to touch it, and I felt that energy go up my arm. And ever since that time, whenever I think about Ami, I always feel like she's floating over my right shoulder. But then I did have another chance to see Ami. I think it was in 2001, where the people who were the guardians of the skull at the time, it now has shifted hands, and we don't know. Since 2009, we're not sure who has the skull. The guardian hasn't come forward. But in 2001, the owners, they were trying to sell it, and they probably let us do this because we could give them some more information. We worked with a meridian stress test system, and there were 7 people there that we tested to see, and they were blindfolded, so they didn't know when they were being tested with the amethyst skull or with a piece of amethyst or whatever we did. And it definitely showed that when the person was being tested with the skull right by them, their aura readings and their meridian readings were much higher than, let's say, normally. And but also when we tested one of the guardians with Portal de Luz, who I showed you before, he actually responded better to Portal de Luz than he did to his own skull. So this kind of told me that maybe because they were keeping it like in a vault and nobody could see it, that the skull was, you know, not fully activated, which is what I think is happening now, because I can, if your audience believes this, I can actually feel and hear her crying out. She wants to be out like the other skulls, traveling, so people can see her instead of being in prison, because it's kind of like being in prison. So that was the first time that I had experience.
I'd agree with you. And when I was visiting the Crystal Skull in the British Museum, I had a real feeling of that skull being entrapped. It was not a happy skull. And also the Paris one, too. I felt the same with it. In fact, I had an incredible urge to just break the glass open and take it with me, which would have caused all sorts of problems. It was really exciting, too, when I was at the British Skull. This little boy arrived, and his mom says he's been waiting to see this crystal skull for a long time. And look at all the pictures that he's drawn. And she showed me the sketch pad, and it was just incredible. All the pictures of this skull that the little boy had drawn before he even met the crystal skull in person. It was really touching. And there on the wall was a story about the British crystal skull, which really didn't make any sense at all. And she was reading it to him. So I took him aside and told him the story in the way that I thought it was. And he just lit up like a Christmas tree. So these kids really get what this is all about, far more than us adults. They just seem to be plugged into the energy of what a crystal skull is about. They seem to be on the same wavelength, at least some of them. Has that been your experience?
Definitely. Yeah, the young children, we've watched this. I've been doing a lot of public events this last year, and it's amazing watching young children, you know, who don't even know what it is, just coming up and touching it and holding it and being drawn by the energy. So, yeah. So the young children definitely know it. I remember in Brazil there was a young boy who had some mental problem, and his mother couldn't understand why he kept coming up to the crystal skull and kind of caressing it and everything. It's because, you know, he could feel this really good energy that's coming from it. So absolutely I agree. And the same with the British skull, the corner of the room that they have it in right now, the energy there is absolutely terrible. And what happened is I took Portal de Luz and I literally put him around the four corners of the glass case, and he became a very terrible, ugly, dark shade of gray. Normally he's a light shade of gray. So he was trying to heal that skull to pull some of that energy away from it. And, you know, when I show people the pictures of this in my lectures, they can say, are you sure that's the same crystal skull that I see over there? Because, you know, he just changed. So, yeah, definitely agree with you, Tyson.
So you've been doing gatherings all over the world, particularly in Europe. Do you have any more scheduled? They seem to be quite amazing that people in places I wouldn't even know that they knew about crystal skulls actually came out and attended the conferences that you were involved in organizing.
As far as what we have coming up, I think it looks like I'll probably be going back to Europe in the spring, but that's not confirmed as of this time. I worked with this couple that had a beautiful crystal store in Ghent, Belgium, and we had a lot of people come, and they were very happy with, you know, the combination of things we offered between the sessions that I did with the skulls and the workshop, and we did a meditation. We did one of the world peace meditations. So I think that'll probably come up, and we're continuing to do more events here locally in the Seattle area. So I just never know, you know, just like new opportunities come up. The main thing that I'm working on right now, Tyson, is I have 2 new books that I'm working on, novels. And although I'm not a novelist, I have 2 members of our free Crystal Skull newsletter who are novelists. So they're able to take my stories and, you know, they're putting in the color and the conversation with the characters and everything. So because it's taking us so long to write the stories, what I've actually been working on, even before I talked to you today, is to set up what I call a membership site where people, if they join as a member, they can get a chapter every month from the book, because we already have a number of chapters done. So I'm hopeful either before the end of this year or early 2016 that we're going to have this membership, plus all the interviews that I've done too. I've talked to some interesting people like Bill Holman, Robin Foy, who's connected to the skull experiment. Who else? A couple of interesting people. There's a medium that people are going to hear from in the first month. Teresa Carroll, who's here, that had like 4 or 5 different guides that spoke through the tour session we had with her. So, just different information that I've collected that I've never had a way to share before. It's going to come out. So that's another main project. I'm always connected with doing new books, so that's just part of who I am.
So that will be like a crystal skull club, where people would have a monthly membership and have access to all this information. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I'm working with the plugin for WordPress. We have a WordPress site. It's a complicated plugin. I do have computer background, but even with my background, it's still taking me a lot of tests and a lot of questions to get it working. But I think within a week or so, I may have it up, and I'm going to start letting people know. So
yeah, once you get it up, let me know. I'll host it on our online academy, put a link over to yours as well, and also off of the Wellness Show page. So we're getting close to the end of the show here, but I know that you want everybody to know about and you already talked about it, but could you go back over it? You have a monthly gathering, and that's what is the 13th of every month. Is that correct?
Yes. On January 1st, we do it the first time, and then the 13th of every month we do it. So there are 13 meditations that we do each year. So if people just go to crystalskullexplorers.com, which is our main website, and they go to about the middle of the page, they'll find a link to a page that explains how to do this World Peace Meditation on the 13th of each month, and also January 1st. All you have to do is just listen to the MP3 audio, which is basically Katrina guiding them. It takes about 20 minutes or so. And I feel that every time we do the World Peace Meditation, we keep building on that energy. So I think we've done this meditation now about 70 or 80 times since 2009. And then every time we do the meditation, I ask people, take that good energy and send it forward to the next Crystal Skull World Day, which I don't have confirmation yet, but it could be November 13th. There's good numbers that work out for that day.
Well, I'll just let everybody know on the call that there is a website, a Facebook page that you can go to, and all the latest announcements that have to do with crystal skulls, they can be posted there as well, and also the links to your website so people can stay in touch with you. So as we wind this down, what would you like to leave everybody with regard to crystal skulls? I know it's a passion of mine, absolutely. I personally, I couldn't think of something more important that if you're on a spiritual path than to have a crystal skull. It's such a conduit to a higher level of consciousness that I personally would encourage everybody who feels called to become a crystal skull carrier. But I know you have been doing this a lot longer than I have. So what sort of advice or comments do you have to leave to listeners?
Well, if a person is open and willing to have an experience with the crystal skull, they might want to first try to contact one of the existing guardians and just see how they respond to it. And if they have a good response to it and they're interested to get their own, then basically they need to follow their intuition on that. I mean, you can go on eBay and you can see all these skulls, so you can get an idea what kind of skull might resonate for you, or you can go into a local crystal store, or we help people, like I said. I think since I've met Katrina, we've probably placed over 1,000 skulls ourselves, which is like unbelievable, but it's true. I mean, every year, there's another 100, 150 that are coming through us, which she's charging. And then once they have the crystal skull, don't have an expectation of what's going to happen. Just let it go with the flow. Just let it happen itself. Meditate with the skull. Don't have expectations. See where it takes you. And of course, there's a lot of people teaching. When I first started, there was hardly anyone talking about crystal skulls. Now there's hundreds of people that are teaching about it, and it's impossible to keep up with all the crystal skulls that are coming out now. So I really recommend it. First, have an experience, see if it resonates for you, and then perhaps get your own, and then go from there. But the only thing is if you accept to become a guardian, your life's going to change. So I think it will change for the better, but if you're happy where things are, don't get a crystal skull, because it's going to change it.
Right. So Joshua, when you say that you charge the skulls and you help people find the skull that's the match with them, when you say charge it, you're actually talking about the fact that they sit for a period of time with your crystal skull family, and that you do an activation ceremony. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what Katrina does. She gets guided when she has the skull. She takes it. In the area we live, we have a lot of natural areas, forests, rivers, oceans, mountains. So she gets guided to take it outside in nature, and she just kind of does a little ceremony with it, and it talks with her, and she just knows how to prepare it. So then after the skull tells her what to do, it's ready to go, and it goes to the person. And then sometimes we give the person a little bit of advice. But basically, it's just to have contact with your skull, meditate with it, and it will communicate with you, and it'll start telling you what it wants. If it wants to, like I know Portal de Luz told me when I was in Europe, Dad, take me to the crop circles. So that year we saw like 5 crop circles. And of course, I'm sure it changed this whole frequency and energy. So it's kind of an adventure. You never know what's going to happen each day.
That's right. You become the arms and legs of the body of the crystal skull. And when it wants to have an experience, if you're a crystal skull carrier, you better be prepared to follow through. Joshua, it's been I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, they'll keep talking and chatting at you till you do what they ask you to do. If they want to go somewhere.
Well, Joshua, it's been a pleasure talking to you. We'll have to stay in touch and see how it all unfolds. So come on back on the show and tell us all the latest adventures, and let me know when your next books are ready. And we can also have a talk about that on the show as well. So thank you ever so much for joining us today, and all the best with all your Crystal Skull family.
Thank you so much, Tyson. It's been a pleasure.
For quality online wellness products, courses, and services, visit our sponsors, theWellnessShow.ca and the Extraordinary Healing Arts Academy located at theWellnessAcademy.ca. To stay in touch, visit us at theWellnessShow.ca. And until next time, be healthy, wealthy, and wise.